Welcome to Satsang. Let's do one thing. Maybe you can all move up a little bit. Great. You're all good. It's there because that's the door. Then people can just come in and sit down. So this is our cozy, when it rains unexpectedly at Satsang time. Space to be in and be dry. Hopefully this unseasonal rain is ending today or tomorrow, we hope. As beautiful as it is here with the rain, it's not very good for the farmers at all. So we're very happy that it seems like this climate change induced rain is going to be finally ending. Upon whom I am praying, to whom I am praying. And I'm asking for something, whatever it may be. Meditation is two becoming one. In meditation, there's no longer a separation between the lover and the beloved, between the meditator and the object of meditation. When you go into meditation, there is, but then through the process of meditation, through meditating, two becomes one. Also, in meditation, there isn't a sense of asking for something. Meditation is a deep dive into the truth of who we are. It's an undoing of who we are not, so that we can actually experience who we are. So in meditation we're peeling back layers. We're letting go. Not this. Not that. I'm not my clothes. I'm not my body. I'm not my thoughts. Meditation is this peeling away process, such that that which remains is what the Hindus tend to refer to as everything and the Buddhists tend to refer to as nothing. But it's that same experience where there's no longer any separation between you and the universe. Think about it. If I've got a glass jar of air and the glass jar breaks, what do I have? Well, some people may say you've got nothing. Like, you used to have a glass jar of air, now your jar broke, you've got nothing. But you could also say I've got everything. Because I used to only have air in this glass. And then the glass broke. Now what I've got is all the air. So you could see it as nothingness or you could see it as everythingness. Either way, it doesn't matter. But that's where meditation brings us, ultimately, is that awareness of who we are that arises as an experience into that place of everythingness or nothingness, into that place in which there's no longer an ego. See, in prayer, there's still an ego. Even if we're being the most humble people in the world, oh God, I am nothing. I am nothing, God. Well, that's still ego. Ego is I'm the best and I'm the worst. I'm everything, I'm nothing. As long as there's a sense of I am, that's ego. And so in prayer, the ego is saying, oh God, please give me, do for me, meaning I exist. I exist as a separate being over here who's very much in need of something. Or even if our prayer is just purely gratitude, oh God, thank you so much for your blessings. Prayer is beautiful, by the way. Nobody should get the idea that just because there's an ego involved, just because it's two, that there's something problematic with it. Prayer is exquisite. But it's different than meditation. Deep prayer is this gratitude. Oh God, thank you. And it's beautiful. It's the opportunity to dive into bhakti, into devotion, into love for God, into gratitude. Two isn't always bad. The whole bhakti tradition is rooted in two. We love God, we worship God, we're devoted to God. Come on in, it's okay. We're devoted to God. And we're very willing to accept our two-ness because the experience of loving is so beautiful. And you can only love as long as there's two. But meditation is going into the experiential awareness that there is no two. The lover, the beloved, and love is all one in meditation. So I think that's the biggest difference. By the way, they're both things that you should do every day. We should have a practice of prayer and a practice of meditation. For me, I begin with prayer and then meditation. It's easier to go, I have found, from 2 to 1 rather than from 1 to 2. Begin in prayer. Thank you so much. Or please bestow upon me whatever it is. If in that moment I feel there is something I need, some guidance, some blessing, some clarity, whatever. Oh God. And then you drop into meditation in an experience that you are not separate from the one to whom you're praying. And it's a very, very beautiful movement in sadhana. Other questions here? Yes. He's got a mic for you.
So how can we be positive all the times in our routine life?
How to be positive all the time. The only way to actually, well, there's 2 ways. One is healthy, one is unhealthy. The unhealthy way is that you simply repress and push away all that would make you not positive. You just repress it, you ignore it, you push it away, you deny it. Now the problem with that is it doesn't actually work on a very deep level. The frustration, the anger, the grief, the resentment, the despair, it's festering inside of you. And like a volcano, it's going to explode at some point, in some way. And it takes a lot of energy to keep repressing. The other way to do it is to shift what it is you are focused on for your mood. So for example, there's a lot of things I could look at to decide my mood. I mean, the stock market is doing one thing. The weather's doing another thing. Traffic is doing another thing. My family members are doing another thing. My hair and my body and my weight is doing another thing. And, my career is doing another thing. My following on social media is doing another thing. We've got dozens of different stimuli from which we could have a response of our mood. So for example, if I choose to hook into the stock market, like that's going to be what decides my mood. It goes up, I'm positive. It goes down, I'm bereft, negative, sad. Come on in. We can make some room for you. I always say there's no Hindi translation for there's no more room. In India, there's always room. So if I decide that my positivity, my mood, is going to be determined by the stock market, okay, so based on whatever it does, I'm either positive or I'm negative. Or I'm going to make it based on people around me. They're nice to me, they appreciate me, they act the way I want them to, I'm positive. They don't, I'm negative. Or I'm going to hook it into my social media following. I get a lot of likes and comments, I'm positive. I don't, I'm negative. Or my body, I gave you 10 options. There's dozens more. As long as I hook my mood into something that keeps changing and over which I have no control, there's absolutely no honest, real way to be positive all the time. You hook into the stock market, sometimes it's going to go down. You hook into how other people are, sometimes they are just not going to act the way you want them to. You hook into social media, there will be days nobody likes or comments. Okay, it happens. They're changing algorithms. Like, whatever we hook into, you cannot be positive all the time. Unless you hook into something that A, doesn't keep changing, and B, over which you have control. In the South, if my internal experience and my internal choice is what determines my positivity, then I can be positive all the time without repression or denial. Because I can say, yes, the stock market has crashed. I have lost a lot of money. And I choose to be peaceful and happy. People around me are not acting or treating me the way I want them to. But I still have the power to choose peace and to choose happiness. There's no natural law that says thou shalt have an emotional response based on the stock market or people around you or the traffic or the weather. We do it based on our expectations, based on desires, based on all of that. So you could decide, I'm no longer going to have my mood based on all of that. And only then could you be positive. But there's another deep layer to it. When we think of being positive, a lot of times it leads us into a very shallow existence. There are things in life about which we should not be positive. There are people dying of hunger. There are women dying in childbirth because they don't have access to medical care. Trees are being cut down, rivers are being polluted, indigenous populations who live in the trees along the rivers are being displaced and dying. These are not things that we need to figure out, how can I be positive about them? Or how can I simply unhook myself from it and find peace and joy anyway? These are actually things that call upon the very basic humanity within each of us to respond. When you see a starving child as you walk down the road, the question is not, how can I find joy anyway? The question is, how can I help him? So we want to be careful on our spiritual path that we don't forget the sacredness of humanity. We're not divine despite the fact that we have human bodies. We are divine in our human bodies. And so in this positivity, we want to find another aspect of which we can be positive, which is our ability to use our life, whatever our skills may be, whatever our resources may be, whatever our area of impact and influence may be, and we all have it in different ways, to actually make a difference in the world. You cannot be positive in a vacuum. We are connected. We are energetic beings connected to each other. Quantum physics today is telling us what our sages and rishis told us thousands of years ago. That which happens in one part of the universe impacts another part, which means that child dying of hunger is impacting me even if I'm not subtle enough in my awareness to notice it. Even if I'm not deep enough to feel that, I'm actually still being impacted by it. And so in your positivity, we unhook ourselves from the day-to-day nonsense that most of us are hooked into for our mood. But we consciously actually hook ourselves into all of the ways that our very positive being can bring about change. Because people who are negative are not change makers. People who say, oh, what am I going to do, right? I mean, like, I'm not president of the universe. What am I going to do? I don't have $1 billion. What am I going to do? I've got to feed 2 kids and keep a roof over their heads. What am I going to do? These are not the change makers. Because wherever we are, whatever situation we're in, we have the ability to make a change on some level. You may not personally be the one to feed every starving child in the world. But for example, if you simply become a vegetarian, you free up such an extraordinary amount of grain. You could feed 15 people. Every time you choose vegetarian food over non-vegetarian food, it's literally freeing up grain for 15 other people. Every time you eat meat instead of vegetarian food, it's essentially saying, I deserve the food of 15 other people. Let them starve because I want meat. The amount of grain, wheat, corn, soy, rice that goes into the production of meat literally takes, it's a ratio of 16 to 1. 16 pounds of grain at the end of the day gives you a pound of beef. But 16 pounds of grain could give you 16 pounds of bread or pasta or rice. So we are literally saying, let them go hungry. I want the food of 15 other people. So our impact on the world doesn't necessarily have to be the same as everyone's. We all have different abilities to influence and impact and bring about change. But we all can do something. So as you're questing for positivity, as you find it, as you choose love and choose peace, realize that that positivity is needed to help bring about change in the world. Beautiful. Yes.
Firstly, I pay my reverence to your lotus feet. And secondly, my question is getting self-realized...
Can you hold it a little closer
sorry.
so we can all hear you? Thank you.
Sorry. So I want to know if thing called self-realization predestined thing, or can actions, genuine actions towards becoming self-realized person, can it still be achieved? Because if I recall the story of Mahatma Buddha, so right at his childhood, it was predicted that he is going to be a self-realized
Right. Yes, of
person.
course.
So if I am not blessed, maybe...
Is there hope for the rest of us?
Yes.
Absolutely there is. So she asked, is self-realization, God realization, enlightenment, is this all only predestined? Or if it wasn't necessarily predestined for us, do we still have a chance? That Bhagawan Bodh, the being we call the Buddha, in his early childhood, even before he was born, it was destined. Told to his parents, this boy is going to be. If that wasn't told to our parents, is it still possible? Through our actions? Absolutely. Absolutely. No one is disqualified from moksha. No one is disqualified from God realization. The issue has to do just with the ego. That which blocks us from self-realization and God realization, which are the same thing, is just the ego. Because as long as I think I am separate, as long as I identify as the physical body, its story, its bank account, its career, its title, its emotions, its thoughts, its history, well then I'm not going to realize my oneness with God, because see, I'm this being sitting over here who's had this life and has this much money in her bank account and has this title and that role, and so I'm not going to be able to realize that truth. In order to realize the self as God, I have to be able to let go of what I actually think I am, which is the body and the story. And so it's a freedom from the clutches of the ego. Now, our past births absolutely have an impact because the family we're born into, the culture and society we're born into, the opportunities that we are given in our very young childhood before we start consciously making decisions, they form what we call sanskaras, impressions upon our psyches. In Western medicine, we would call it a neural network or neural patterns that tend to determine how I'm going to act, even though I have free will. Once my sanskaras and neural networks have been set, determined not by me, I was too young to decide, it was determined by past lives, the karma from that determined what family I was going to be born into, what situation, what society, what my experiences and exposures would be. So that's what ends up making us, in general, more likely or less likely, or making it easier or more difficult for us to touch that spiritual experience. But you absolutely, regardless of what experiences you had in the formative years, anybody can say, I'm done with my patterns, I'm creating new ones, and start immediately. We know that we can do it neurologically. We used to think the brain no longer could change after late adolescence, early 20s. We now know everything you do changes the brain. Meditation changes your brain. So neurologically we know it's true, and spiritually, of course, we know it's true. Look at Kalidas, right? There's a beautiful, beautiful story of one of the greatest thinkers, philosophers, poets, writers of Indian spiritual tradition. He was a robber. He wasn't just confused and depressed and anxious and in his ego. He was actually what they call a dacoit, a bad guy, a robber, a stealer, a harmer. And it's a long story, but just in brief, he was sitting at a well, the old types of wells where you had to bring up the water with the rope. And he noticed that on the wall of the well, where the rope went up, there was a groove in the wall, just from the water being pulled up. And he had this awareness, this realization in that moment that the act of pulling the water up is creating a groove in the wall of this stone well. It's carving into the wall just through my action of bringing up the water. And realized that he could do the same thing with his own mind. That with his own actions, he could create new grooves in his psyche, in his brain, in his personality, in all of who he was. And so he transformed from being a robber, a bad guy, into being not just a nice man, but actually an enlightened being whose works have brought inspiration and awakening to so many. So it's a beautiful reminder. You've got to do the work. You've got to lay the new groove. It's not going to just happen automatically. But through doing it, absolutely. Doing that work and a simple surrender. It's a simple calling out to God, essentially, that says, I want enlightenment more than I want to hold on to this idea of who I think I am. I want to know you more than I want to stay convinced that I know myself. As long as my priority is continuing to know myself as I think myself is, I will never have that realization, because the two cannot coexist. Either I know myself as God, or I know myself as just this. And a lot of us, we're attached to it. I mean, we've built our whole identities and personalities and lives around it. I am like this, I am like that. This is what I can do. These are my issues. This is my story. And we get very attached to it. This whole sense of don't you know who I am-ness. But if you're prepared to let go of that, say, I don't even know who I am. Show me. It'll happen. Other questions? Yeah.
नमस्कार गुरु माँ।
नमस्कार।
माँ, मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है कि जब हम प्रार्थना करते हैं तो हम 15 मिनट 20 मिनट जो भी हम अपना लेके चलते हैं, तो हमें लगता है कि हमने अपनी बात भगवान जी से कह दी। ठीक है, जैसे हमारा कोई प्रदेश में हमारा कोई रिश्तेदार रहता है तो हम उससे बात कर लेते हैं और हमारा उससे ये पता चल जाता है क्या हाल है, हमने अपना हाल बता देते हैं।
I'll translate it all for you in a minute. Yes.
लेकिन जब हम मेडिटेशन करते हैं तो कई बार तो भगवान से और हमारा योग मिल जाता है, और जब नहीं मिलता तो एक खलश सी रह जाती है सारे दिन के लिए। थैंक यू।
So she said, going back to our first question about prayer and meditation, she said, when we pray, say we pray for 15 minutes, we feel very satisfied. Like, I talked to God for 15 minutes and I told him everything. In the same way, like I met a friend or a family member for a cup of tea, and over the course of this cup of tea, I have told them everything. Good conversation, done. And we get the same satisfaction in our prayer to God. I've told you everything. I've done my prayers, told you everything. But in meditation, sometimes that meeting doesn't seem to happen. And you're left with a bit of an emptiness, something missing in the day. Conversations we can do, regardless of how fully present we are. I can have a conversation with you over a cup of tea, telling you lots of things, while my mind is simultaneously someplace else. We do it all the time. We think the person in front of us doesn't notice. They do notice. They can tell we're kind of distracted, but we're carrying on a very seemingly normal conversation, even though we are not actually fully there. Same thing can happen in prayer. I can't tell you how many times Pujya Swamiji actually does a brilliant, really funny rendition of it, of people doing their prayers. They're in the middle of, doing the morning arati in their temple, and in the midst of chanting the arati, they're, yelling at the staff to make sure that, breakfast is on the table, and, then another verse of the arati, and then yelling at someone to, get their phone, and we're doing it. We're speaking the words, they're coming out of my mouth, but my mind is on, like, is my breakfast ready? Does my kid have the sweater? Could somebody answer the phone for God's sakes? Whatever it might be. So we're not actually there. In order for that meeting to happen in meditation, we actually have to show up fully. It doesn't happen when we're not really there. God is always there, but we're not always there. We sit to do our meditation. We're watching our breath. But our mind is, right? This is why it's so important to keep bringing the mind in. Bringing the mind. And if the mind is chattery, give it a mantra. Chant a mantra. But do something that will keep the mind there. Now the same thing goes with the mantra, by the way. You could be chanting your mantra and making a shopping list in your brain. So it's not just chanting with your mouth. They say with the mantra you should be able to hear it, not just because you're doing it loudly, even you're doing it silently. Hear it in your mind. You should be able to hear it. You should be able to see it. You should be able to taste it. Now that's really subtle. I mean, that's an incredibly beautiful challenge. I'm chanting, but I'm not listening. So I'm not actually even hearing. My lips are moving. There's sound, even in my own mind, coming out. But the listening part of my mind isn't there. The seeing part of my mind isn't there. So bring the fullness of yourself to meditation. What you'll find is when you are fully there, it happens. And you may find there's a particular time of day in which that's easier for you. Usually first thing in the morning or in the evening before sleep. And you may need to do some things before you meditate. Things are on your mind. You wake up in the morning, you've got a bunch of things on your mind. Write them down first. Keep a notebook, a pen, an audio recorder, whatever it is. It comes, write it down. Get it out of your mind. So that the mind can become still. You show up, God will be there. Yeah. And by the way, even if you don't feel it, it actually gives you another beautiful way to live the day, which is missing God. There's something very sweet about that. That heart that is longing for God is a very sweet place to be. So if in your morning meditation you didn't feel like you really connected to God, allow yourself to live from that sweet place of missing God all day. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Because it'll keep your mind on God all day long. So let that sense of missing not just be something that you say, chalo koi baat nahi, kal fir koshish karte, but actually let it be something that permeates your day. How are you? Oh, I'm missing God today. Missing God. Looking for God. And it'll give you a whole new way of living that day. You'll start looking at flowers differently, trees differently, people differently. Where's God? Didn't show up in my meditation today. Where's God? Where's God? And you'll just start looking at the world in a very different, very beautiful way. Yeah. Yes, in the back.
Thank you for your grace and wisdom. I just wanted to hear from you about... Thank you for your grace and wisdom. I just wanted to understand from you about authentic forgiveness. How do we authentically forgive ourselves and others and move forward with purpose, with the same set of people?
Well, any type of forgiveness that's not authentic is essentially useless. So all of our forgiveness should always be authentic. Whatever we do should be authentic. If you can't authentically forgive, stay mad. At least you're authentically mad. It's better to hold an authentic grudge than to have fake forgiveness. Because at least the authentic grudge will keep reminding you that there is work to be done. The authentic anger will keep reminding you there is work to be done. The fake forgiveness lulls you into thinking your work is done. So you actually get nowhere. forgiveness both of ourselves and of others is critical. I speak about it a lot because it's so important. And the key point of forgiveness is that it's not based on the act. It's not that we are saying there are some acts that are forgivable and some acts that are unforgivable, or that we're saying all acts are forgivable. What we're saying is there is a law of karma that is here on earth in order to give the necessary repercussions of actions that are performed. We are not, thankfully, the distributors of the law of karma. Thankfully, it's not up to us to decide who's going to get what. There's a science behind it. And it doesn't require our involvement or engagement. We don't even have to believe in it. But it works. You don't have to believe in gravity. You're still going to fall off the roof if you take a step too far over the edge. Karma works. And so whether it's repercussions we are going to face, challenges we're going to go through, or challenges others are going to go through, that's part of the law. That is an arrow that has been flung from a bow. It's going to land wherever it lands. That piece of the karma you've already put into motion through whatever action somebody did that was wrong, or that you did that was wrong. That action has already put a karmic cycle in motion. That's what I mean by the arrow from the bow. You can't undo it. The fruits of that karma will already come. The seed has been planted. Now the question is, now what? Since we are not in charge of the law of karma, now what? Either we hold on grudges and anger at others, guilt and shame toward ourselves. The reason we forgive is because regardless of what has been done, by us or to us, we deserve to be free. That's our birthright. Moksha. She was asking about, are there things we can do? Yes, and I said nobody is disqualified from moksha, from ultimate freedom, from awakening, from enlightenment. Certainly not from joy and peace. We forgive because if we don't forgive, we cannot be free. If I'm holding a grudge, that grudge is what keeps me stuck. I'm holding on to anger, the anger keeps me stuck. I'm holding on to guilt or shame, that keeps me stuck. So I forgive not because it was okay. Not because I'm saying no problem, it doesn't matter, that person should do it to me again. What I'm saying is, regardless of what they did to me, I deserve to be free. Therefore, I need to forgive. They will get whatever karmic fruit is coming. But I deserve to be free. And in order to be free, I have to forgive. If I don't forgive, and I hold on to anger, or guilt and shame, what I'm saying is, someone hurt me once, or maybe 10 times. Or I made a mistake once, or maybe 10 times. And now I'm going to carry that hurt and that mistake into every minute and every moment of my life. And that's what we don't want to be doing. We become the ones who bring it into the present day. The hurt was from the past. but we bring it into now. They hurt us then, but we are hurting ourselves now. We were the victim then. We're the perpetrator now. Every day I hold on to my anger and grudge, now I'm the perpetrator. I'm no longer the victim. My story may be a story of being a victim, but I'm actually the perpetrator of violence against myself by not letting go. So if I'm miserable and I blame what someone else did to me for my misery, it's not actually true. The real source of my misery is that I haven't been able to let go. So we let go. Not because it was okay. Not because we are saying to the universe, absolve them of their karmic fruits. But because we know that whatever was done to us, we deserve to be free. And whatever we've done, we deserve to be free. What happened through us. It's this much of who we are. Yeah, there'll be some repercussions. You'll face them, you'll deal with them. But who you are is this much. A mistake happened through you, okay. Mistakes happen through all of us. We face the repercussions. But it's not who we are. You're not someone else's mistake, you're not your mistake. And being here on the banks of Ganga, I always say, is the perfect place. It's the perfect place to let go. It's the place I learned to forgive and let go. It's the waters of Mother Ganga who purifies. So whatever it is, just let it go. And then when you're with that person, it's hard. It's obviously easier if you never have to see that person again. But if you have to keep seeing them, it's an opportunity to see each moment as a new moment. Rather than seeing the them of the past, see the them of today. But lastly, if you are going to keep seeing them, make sure that you learn the lessons. Because forgiveness does not mean I'm going to let you do it to me again. Forgiveness doesn't mean that along with my forgiveness, I've given you my intelligence. I retain my intelligence. I retain my common sense. I retain my self-preservation. And I forgive you. Meaning I need to be free, so I forgive. But I also need not to be hurt again. So I'm not gonna trust you again in that way until and unless you have earned it again. So forgiving does not mean you just become a doormat and people can walk all over you. Does that make sense? Good. Wonderful. We'll take yours tomorrow. Kal le lete aapki. You're not going to be here tomorrow. Okay, we'll take it. No problem.
Hare Krishna Mataji and Danvat. My question is, what works? The Almighty God to whom we do worship or our belief? Thank you.
What works? God, to whom we pray, or our belief and faith in God? Both. Both. Independently of each other. God works whether you believe or not. And belief works even if the person you believe in turns out not to be so worthy of it. There's a great story of a disciple, and he really wants to be able to walk on water. And he's got lots of faith in his guru. And his guru says, no problem, you will walk on water. And so the guy says, oh, Thank you, Guruji. Thank you, please. And so the Guru hands him a leaf. He writes something on the leaf and he folds up the leaf. And he hands it to the guy and he says, written on this leaf is the mantra that will carry you across the water. But you must not open the leaf. You must keep it closed. So the guy takes it, he takes the leaf and he starts walking. And he actually is walking on water. And he gets a little bit into the river. And suddenly doubt creeps in. What could it be? My God, I'm walking on water. What kind of mantra could this possibly be? Amazing. I should see what this is. And so he opens up the leaf. And on the leaf is written faith. And of course, as he opens the leaf, he sinks into the water. So God works whether you believe or not. But your faith also works. Even if what you have faith in isn't necessarily God. I mean, in medicine, it's called the placebo effect. Right? 50% of people get better on sugar pills. Anybody wonders about the power of the mind? So whatever we've got faith in, it's going to work. And God works anyway. Wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your night. Unless it's raining again, which for the farmer's sake, I hope it's not. We will be back out in our garden, our sacred garden again from tomorrow. And have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. And so much love to you all.